I want you to picture someone you trust, a neighbor, a teacher, maybe even yourself. Now imagine that same person participating in acts they once swore they would never commit. Cruelty. Humiliation. Silence in the face of suffering. We like to believe monsters are born different from us. But my life's work has taught me something far more unsettling. Under the right conditions, ordinary people can cross moral lines with frightening ease, and often without realizing when it happens. For decades, I've studied how environments shape behavior, how roles, uniforms, rules, and power quietly bend good intentions. I've watched volunteers change within days, not because they were sadistic, but because the situation invited them to be. The evidence doesn't come from ideology or opinion. It comes from controlled experiments, courtrooms, military archives, and the uncomfortable patterns that repeat across cultures and generations. We grow up believing character is destiny, that morality is a fixed trait, like eye color. But psychology tells a different story. When people enter systems that reward obedience, discourage dissent, and blur personal responsibility, behavior shifts. Slowly at first, a joke becomes an insult. An order becomes an excuse. In one carefully designed simulation, healthy young adults were randomly assigned roles of authority and subordination. There were no scripts, no instructions to be cruel. Yet within days, degradation became routine, not because of who they were, but because of where they were placed and what the situation demanded. The most chilling moment is never the first act of cruelty. It's the moment after, when no one stops it. I watched participants justify behavior that horrified them just hours earlier. Their language changed. Rules were followed. It wasn't personal. I had no choice. Their moral compass didn't break. It recalibrated. This is what research describes as deindividuation, when anonymity and group identity reduce self-awareness and accountability. When authority pressure is added, resistance collapses even faster. This same mechanism appears in obedience studies, where ordinary people delivered painful shocks simply because an authority figure insisted. The transformation isn't dramatic. It's procedural, bureaucratic, almost boring. Here is the core truth. Most people resist. Extraordinary cruelty rarely comes from extraordinary people. It comes from powerful situations that make harmful behavior feel normal, necessary, even justified. Systems create scripts. Roles provide cover. Language sanitizes harm. When responsibility is spread thin, everyone was involved. I was just doing my job. Moral disengagement takes hold. Once people see themselves as instruments instead of moral agents, empathy fades. Cruelty becomes efficient. Conscience doesn't disappear. It's trained to fall asleep. What haunts me most is not the behavior itself, but how human it all is. These were not predators or sociopaths. They were students, volunteers, people who laughed, who cried, who later expressed genuine shame. That detail matters because it means prevention is possible. If we insist that cruelty belongs only to bad people, we protect our ego but abandon our responsibility. The capacity for harm lives beside the capacity for good. Which one surfaces depends less on personality and more on the invisible architecture surrounding us. Now take this out of the laboratory and into your own life. Relationships are systems. Families are systems. Workplaces are systems. Wherever there is power, there are rules spoken and unspoken. When one person controls approval, affection, status, or silence, others adapt. Boundaries erode slowly. Not because people are weak, but because the situation trains compliance. And the person with power, they often don't feel cruel at all. They feel reasonable. Honest, just being firm. This is how harm hides behind normality. History offers relentless confirmation. Prisons, military units, corporations, entire nations. The pattern never changes. Anonymity, authority, ideology, and gradual escalation. No one wakes up intending to become a monster. They step into a role. They follow a rule. They justify one small act. Then another. By the time they notice who they become, it feels permanent. That is the danger of systems that value obedience over conscience. I've been criticized for revealing this. Some say it removes personal responsibility. I believe the opposite. Understanding situational power does not excuse behavior, it exposes it. And exposure is the first step toward resistance. If we refuse to examine how good people do bad things, we guarantee repetition. The most dangerous sentence in human history is, "I would never do that." The data says otherwise, and I include myself in that warning. So here is the truth I want you to sit with. The line between good and evil is not fixed. It moves, and it moves when we stop paying attention. The real question is not whether you are a good person. The real question is whether you are aware of the forces acting on you, pressuring you, shaping you, granting permission to abandon your values. Awareness doesn't make you immune, but it gives you a chance. So I'll ask you this. If you were placed inside a system that rewarded cruelty, punished compassion, and normalized silence, how long do you think it would take before you changed? And more importantly, would you recognize the moment when you did silence reflection? Awareness.